So in the United States, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and I was a little rushed in getting this particular video out. Thought it was important, but I apparently didn't do it justice. I also, so I'm going to talk about how much the United States has spent in Ukraine, a little bit more just to clarify something. Now, somebody else also clarified that it's Krinkey, not Krinkney, and apparently I said Krinkney, and that's not a function of, and he said slow down. That's not a function of me slowing down. It's a function of me just bungling languages that I'm not familiar with, and I apologize for that. But here, how much the U.S. has spent in Ukraine. Okay, so we watched this video, and we're going to watch a little clip of it where the broad point was this, that you can't listen to these crazy, outlandish figures like you heard a senator telling Tucker Carlson here. Let's listen to this first. Now, here is 7 months ago, the inflated figure that you're going to hear from U.S. Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, talking about it. I'm just going to play about 10 seconds of him talking to Tucker Carlson when Tucker Carlson was still on his program. And we'll listen to the numbers that he gives and his rationale.
$113 billion, probably more than that, Tucker, probably more like $130 billion.
And that was 7 months ago when this happened, or when this. Okay, so my point was, like, you just keep hearing these outrageous figures out there, and what is the true amount of spending that has been happening for Ukraine? So we're listening to this guy. This guy was a guy that is an economist who used to work with Putin, who is crunching the numbers and looking at it, and he said something vastly different.
For the discussions concerning the U.S. military aid to Ukraine.
Now, I just said U.S. military aid to Ukraine. He didn't say total aid. He said U.S. military aid. But I didn't do a good job clarifying that, which is why I'm clarifying this for you now. Listen to what he has to say. I'll show you the charts, and I'll show you a viewer comment that was freaking awesome.
Because United States politicians and experts and kind of commentators prefer to use some fantastic numbers that do not have any relations with reality. So we need to look into three most important levels of U.S. military aid. The first of all, appropriation by the U.S. Congress. Any military aid that is going to be provided to Ukraine should be adopted by the U.S. Congress. The total amount of U.S. military aid for 2 financial years, year 2002 and year 2003, is $48 billion. This is a maximum level that can be.
Okay, so he said $48 billion. Now, let's look at this. Somebody, one of my viewers, I almost said one of my students, I'm sorry about that. That was a little Freudian slip. It's just my natural day job. Said, Prof, you should take a quick look at Ukraine Aid Tracker of the Kiel Institute for World Economy, a major German government-funded economic research group primarily studying globalism. It has summary charts, full working paper, and data files. Altogether, it's a lot. It's best not to take one person's word for something so complex and involved. Dixon Pinfold 2582. You get an A. I mean, that's exactly right. You should do exactly what he said. It's best not to take one person's word for something so complex. I wasn't taking one person's word for something so complex, but I did bungle something where I need to unpack it a little bit more so that it's clear. So I was talking about military, or he was talking about military aid, and I was trying to show the difference between what we say and what we actually do. But nonetheless, here's EU institutions, here's the United States, and this is the $60 billion, or actually they'd use it in euro, but it's pretty close. And there's 40 something, and he said 48, and this is 42, and this is 23, but so nonetheless, you get to a little north of 70. But 70 is a whole different ballgame from 100, 130, whatever it was that J.D. Vance was talking about over here with Tucker Carlson. It's just a different world. Here's the Center for Public or Council on Public Relations, and what did they have to say here? So they show a chart of about 76 billion in total aid, but again, for military assistance is 46. That's a slightly lower number than what the other gentleman, the economist, said, but nonetheless, that's where we are. So we were talking about just military assistance, and then what he was actually making the case for, this gentleman here was saying it's basically we spent on the military spending about $1 billion a month since the thing began. And that was his broader point, and he was comparing that to the amount that we spent in Great Britain per month in World War II, which was many times that. Okay, so that's where we are. What I was trying to say in my broader point was, I think that we spent more than we actually did spend, because we have talked about $106 billion being appropriated, but we never actually spent it. So we're thinking, oh dear, we have this 50, 60, however many billion dollars plus another 106 billion. We're up to 100 and how many billion dollars of spending, and not even all 106 billion of that was supposed to go to Ukraine. It was only supposed to be about 60 of that, 60 and change of that would go to Ukraine. But nonetheless, in our minds, we're thinking it's something much larger than what it actually is. Okay, but hopefully these charts, and one last thing about these charts, again, loans, financial, how much of this is loans? I don't know that it's a lot. How much of this grants and loans, whatever, is actually loans? I don't know. It reduces a little bit. That's not the point. The point is we're dealing with this much, not that much. And if we're trying to see reality, we need to understand what's going on. But this is somewhat of not a retraction, but a restatement for clarity, to make sure that you're understanding how this aid works. So I'm sorry that I bungled it in phase one here, how much the U.S. spent on Ukraine. I should have been clearer about that. That was just military spending, but part two is telling you the total, and this is part two. Okay, well, questions, comments, snide remarks, or whatever do you have for me? The snide remarks part was for the trolls, not for this guy, who, again, this guy here, Dixon Pinfold 2582, you get an A. That was awesome for you to point that out, and that's right. I've told you many times on this channel right here, please don't just take my word for it. He said, quote, again, it's best not to take one person's word for something so complex and involved. I've said many times, like, triangulate on the facts. You get it from multiple sources, not just sources that you naturally lean to. If you're conservative, read some liberal sources. If you're a liberal, read some conservative sources, just to understand what's going on. And I've even said this: if you hear me say it, don't just take my word for it. Go somewhere else. Find other people who can verify what has actually happened. Now, there's safety in that. And don't listen to somebody who says, I know everything, or acts like they know everything and they have this inside secret Gnostic understanding of what's going on, and everybody else are fools and they're wrong. Run away from those people. Okay, that's just good critical thinking skills. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. Thank you for the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.